doesn't love an action figure? Pitting your favorite toys against each other as a kid is the closest many of us will ever get to running a wrestling promotion. A promotion where the matches all took place on a kitchen worktop. These plastic collectibles are also a great way for companies to make money, as the wacky, overblown world of wrestling lends itself to the medium perfectly. Even though everyone and their mother's likeness have been licensed, there are nevertheless some huge names out there that have never had an official WWE figure of themselves made. Let's find out who. I'm Sam from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 biggest WWE stars to never have an action figure. Join us! Number 10. The Blue Meanie. In 1995, the world was introduced to the Blue Meanie, the greatest wrestler of all time to be named after a villain from a Beatles movie. Alright, he's the only wrestler to be named after a villain from a Beatles movie, but who's keeping score? Under this gimmick, Brian Heffron became extremely popular in ECW. His big breakthrough came when he, Steven Richards, and Nova formed the Blue World Order, a parody version of the famous WCW stable. They weren't at least partly responsible for killing an entire promotion, so in many ways, they were actually better than the original. Though he was primarily an ECW wrestler, Meanie did also wrestle for WWE during the Attitude Era. Of note, he formed a weird partnership with Goldust where he'd call him his mommy, and then went on to be absolutely decimated by JBL at One Night Stand 2005. Look at him! A truly legendary run. Even though he had one of the most recognizable looks in all of wrestling, Meanie never got made into a WWE action figure. He's had plenty of other figures made by other companies, including getting a micro brawler in 2019, but he's yet to be given an official collectible from the big dub. Number 9. Hakushi. Jinsei Shinzaki is still working in the business in his native Japan, even as he enters his late 50s. He's currently the president of Michinoku Pro Wrestling, a promotion that was not founded by former Kai and Tai member Taka Michinoku, despite the name. Don't worry, we were fooled too. After making a name for himself in that company in the early 90s, Shinzaki started appearing for WWE in 1994, and quickly began building up wins over some young jobbers, one of which was a baby-faced Matt Hardy. Oh, look how cute he is. Can the Baba slap a tornado? Under his new name of Hakushi, Shinzaki wowed audiences with his impressive high-flying moves and athletic ability. A solid mid-card act. Perhaps his biggest issue was that he was ahead of his own time. I hate it when that happens. Hakushi did manage to score a feud with the then WWE champion Bret Hart before departing the company in 1996 and heading back to the land of the rising sun. Even though he was given a fair push over in America, WWE never rewarded Hakushi with an action figure. And it's a shame. He had such a great, unique look. Number 8. Ronnie Garvin. The kayfabe brother of Fabulous Freebirds member Jimmy Jam Garvin, rugged Ronnie Garvin first made a name for himself in Jim Crockett Promotions. In fact, he became the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion in 1987 by beating none other than Ric Flair. Did he only win the belt so Flair could win it back at Starrcade? Well, yes, but Garvin would join the World Wrestling Federation in 1988 and soon became an established part of the roster. He worked the first ever Royal Rumble match to be shown on pay-per-view and would go on to wrestle at several other major shows, including WrestleMania 5. Whilst he never won a championship with the Fed, he was still part of programming during one of its hottest ever periods. You'd have thought that this would have guaranteed him an LJN figure, but sadly this wouldn't be the case. In fact, as far as we're aware, Garvin never got an action figure of any kind from any promotion. This guy headlined Starrcade and you're saying that nobody thought about slapping his face on a plastic toy? I want that special Hands of Stone function, damn it! Number 7. Rockin' Robin. Sadly not a wrestler with a Jackson 5 inspired gimmick, Rockin' Robin was a very popular female performer during WWE's golden era. She had wrestling in her blood as the brother of NWA star Sam Houston and the half-brother of the legendary Jake the Snake Roberts. Robbins? Snakes? I'm starting to think this family has an unhealthy obsession with wild animals. Robin joined WWE in 1987 when the company decided to restart its women's division. Her first big appearance came at the inaugural Survivor Series pay-per-view, where she was on the winning side of a traditional elimination match. She would become women's champion in 1988 by beating Sensational Sherry and would go on to hold the belt for over 500 days. This included an appearance at WrestleMania 5, where she sang America the Beautiful. Great use of your women's champ there, guys. Robin would actually be the final holder of that belt for 3 years when she left the company in 1990. Maybe this is why WWE never commissioned a figure of her, despite such a mammoth reign with the gold. I guess at least Robin and her brother Sam can play with the 300 different Jake the Snake figures whenever they get bored. Number 6. Boris ZHUKOV. Anyone who doesn't know about 80s wrestling might be surprised to learn that grapplers would often perform under gimmicks that had nothing to do with their real lives. For example, take feared Russian wrestler Boris ZHUKOV, whose real name was actually James Harrell from Virginia. It was a simpler time. Harrell first adopted the ZHUKOV gimmick in Texas in 1983, playing off America's animosity toward the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The character got super over as a detested heel, prompting a move to the American Wrestling Association in 1985. Here, he would challenge the likes of Sergeant Slaughter and Rick Martel for various championships, and even beat the Rockers for the tag belts in 1987. This is also where he'd get his very own action figure as part of the AWA Mania collection. Despite working for WWE for 4 years, he was never given another doll. Apologies for using that term, nerds. He was best known for his role in the Bolsheviks, a tag team alongside another Russian character, Nikolai Volkov. Let me just check where he was actually born. Oh, Yugoslavia. Well, that's certainly closer to Russia than Virginia is. Number 5, Paul Roma. If you're gonna join a wrestling company, then you might as well join it in one of the most pivotal years in its history. That is what Paul Roma did when he rocked up in 1984, the year that Hulk Hogan became WWE champion and set in motion one of the most important periods of the company's entire existence. And still no action figure. What's a man gotta do? Oh yeah, be marketable. In his early days with the company, Roma wrestled as a face and scored wins over the likes of Bret Hart and Randy Savage. He then became a young stallion alongside Jim Powers before joining up with Hercules Hernandez to form his most popular act, Power and Glory. Roma came to Herc's rescue after an attack by Rick the Model Martel, and the two would team together for the next year or so. They wrestled a program with the Hart Foundation over the tag team titles, with the Hitman apparently saying that they were the best tag team he'd ever seen. Although that quote does come from Roma himself, so take it with a cement mixer full of salt. Number 4, LEILANI Kai. It might have changed sports entertainment forever, but the first WrestleMania was honestly a bit crap. In terms of major matches, there were only 2 really big ones. One was the main event pitting Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, and the other was the highly anticipated bout over the Women's Championship. Wendy Richter was the plucky challenger for the gold, looking to regain it after losing it just a few weeks earlier. There was a significant buzz around her because she would have pop sensation Cyndi Lauper in her corner. On the other side of the ring was LEILANI Kai, the villainous champion who dethroned Richter in the first place. She had the fabulous Moolah as her manager, who, well, she's not really Cyndi Lauper, is she? Kai dropping the title back to Richter on this night played a huge part in the success of WrestleMania 1, and you could argue, the entire future success of the company. Whilst Wendy finally got a figure back in 2020, the same honor has not been bestowed upon her former foe. Cheer up, LEILANI. We're pretty sure that Lauper never got an action figure either. Just a couple of useless Grammys. Ugh. Number 3, Dino Bravo. Canadian wrestler Dino Bravo was so popular back in the mid-80s that WWE introduced an entirely new Canadian championship just for him. Granted, it only lasted for about 6 months before Bravo left the company, but still, How many championships have you had created for you? Bravo didn't just win his own vanity title, as he was also a World Tag Team Champion alongside Dominic DeNucci. He would also appear in the World Title Tournament at WrestleMania 4, compete in a match at the very first SummerSlam, and was a contender for the Intercontinental Championship during the Ultimate Warrior's time with the gold. The Strongman was a very familiar face during one of wrestling's most popular periods, so why no figure? The murky circumstances surrounding his death may have something to do with it. Bravo was linked to an organized crime family back in Canada that was allegedly involved in smuggling cigarettes for him. He was found shot dead in 1993, presumably at the hands of the mafia. If WWE kicked up such a fuss about China over a couple of raunchy videos, then they certainly weren't going to give a potential gangster his own toy. Number 2, Jazz. Of all the wrestlers on this list, the one who's angriest about not getting an action figure is definitely former women's champion Jazz. The star made a name for herself in ECW as a rough, tough woman who wasn't afraid to mix it up with the men. She found success as part of the Impact Players alongside Justin Credible and Lance Storm. Oh, and Jason, the sexiest man in the world. How could we possibly forget him? Jazz joined WWE in 2001 and debuted in a big way at that year's Survivor Series. She would go on to become a 2-time women's champion before leaving the company in 2004. In 2021, Jazz went on a podcast called The Zone and talked about her frustrations about working for WWE and their lack of promotion of her. She said that she couldn't understand why WWE never gave her an action figure or merch of any kind for that matter. She then asked the company to reach out to her to strike a deal, before saying, "Don't try to throw that shiz at me when I'm dead." Except she didn't say shiz. And number 1, Linda McMahon. Vince McMahon got a WWE action figure as early as 1987. Shane McMahon followed suit in 99, followed by Stephanie in 2000. But where, oh where, is the real star of the McMahon family? The wheelchair-riding, husband-kicking, Senate-running MAGA power that is Linda McMahon. Though she's not been on TV nearly as often as her family members, Linda has been a part of some truly great moments in WWE history. She walked down to the ring with Earl Hebner during the Backlash 2000 main event. She was the one responsible for reinstating Mick Foley ahead of WrestleMania 2000. And who could forget when she rose from her chair at Mania X7 to punt her no-good spouse directly in his notoriously enlarged grapefruits. Though Linda never got an official action figure release, some clever clogs has dug up plans for an unreleased collectible for the future Small Businesses Administrator. The closest thing to an actual release she ever got was a 2001 Jakks Pacific ring gear set entitled Linda's Revenge. It's even got a little wheelchair in it, and a chair that says Hardy Boys on it for some reason. Hang on, is Linda their secret sister? The plot thickens.